Hello again. This is Rob Taub. You're listening to Stribling's New York on WOR AM Radio 710 on your digital dial. Do not turn off this radio or shut down this podcast, whatever you may be doing whenever you're listening to this, because we have a really amazing show. Coming up is going to be Scott Dickers from The Onion, not our next guest, but he's written a new book about Donald Trump that's funny. We have Michael Fox, not Michael J. Fox, just Michael Fox from Rock the Vote. And next, we have Steve Welch from the American River Touring Association, which is also known as ARTA. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
So I'm trying to think of how I can best encapsulate what you guys do. You put together river trips across the world, at least when I first started using you. This is 30 years ago. I amazingly got my wife, who thinks like roughing it is staying at a Hilton, to go to Oregon, and we went on a trip down the Rogue River, and it was the vacation of a lifetime. I really enjoyed
what we do.
So how can you describe what ARTA does and how you facilitate these trips at an unbelievably fair price, I must also add?
Well, we've been doing it for over 50 years, which helps. So we've gotten a lot of the startup costs out of the way, which helps on the pricing. We've gotten a lot of the experimental pieces out of the way, which helps on the quality of the trips. So we're pretty good at what we do. And what we do is anywhere from 1 to 12 days in length, and that's to take people out into the wilderness on guided whitewater rafting trips. We go on trips in Oregon, Idaho, Utah, and California.
I will be going to Utah with you on the Green River this summer on August 12th.
Good to have you back.
My last trip was in 2010 on the Rogue River again, which I've done twice.
Right, and when your first one was, how many years ago?
I think 1982.
Yeah, that's the great part, or one of the great parts about having been in business for 50 years is we get a lot of people that come back after 10, 20-year gaps. They go as a kid themselves, and they come back with their kids, or they go once, and they always say, I'm going to do it again. And so it's really fun. And to see people, like you would have experienced great differences between your trip in 1982, your trip in 2010. Your trip this year will be different just because it's in a different...
Yeah, because now I'm so old that I have a separate suitcase just for all my blood pressure medications. I'll tell you what's unique about this kind of trip. So I'm going to go act as your advocate here, but it really is amazing, is if you go to a particular kind of resort, and let's say you take, okay, I'm going to a Four Seasons hotel, and it's in, some tropical island somewhere, you're going to have very similar guests from a socioeconomic group, and it's going to be pointed and specific, and that's it. If you go to, when I took my first ARTA trip, there was somebody there from San Francisco who was a very well-known attorney, but there was also somebody from St. Louis who was a fireman there with his family, and you had a great cross-section of people that were all there who enjoyed the outdoors and really lived together closely, to say the least, for 3 days and worked together paddling our boats. And there was a remarkable sense of camaraderie and fun and friendship. You could go on on another trip, stay at a hotel, and pass somebody every day at a resort and not say 2 words to them. Whereas this group became quickly entwined and close, and I know it was successful for me because nobody tried to throw me off the boat or drown me, which I had expected to happen. I can be a little overbearing and annoying. It's hard to believe. So that's my pitch on ARTA. Do I nail that there?
Yeah, you nailed it, and you nailed the secret magic of a river trip. A lot of people come into it with the expectation of, I'm going whitewater rafting, which has its own reputation. I'm going camping, which has its own reputation, and those two things are pretty much what people expect. The camping is a little more glamorous than a lot of people will expect, and not as much work. But the community piece, which I'm really glad you touched on, because that's by far my favorite thing, to meet 20 people or meet 15 new friends. 20 is a pretty typical group size. And then go spend 4, 5, 6, 12 days with them in close proximity and be dependent on them, be cooperative with them, have shared experiences with them. It's really there's very few other places in life where that happens, and our guides are really good at facilitating that camaraderie that you talked about. People are really open when they get out into the wilderness about helping each other. And I think that community part of it is the surprise at the end of the trip that people go away thinking, man, that was really fun. It was fun to go rafting. It was fun to go camping. But it was really fun to share that experience with people who I never would have met before, or like you said, who I would have passed on the way to the pool 50 times without ever really.
Yeah. Everybody knows one another's name within the first couple hours there, and you're sharing a paddle boat together. Plus, another thing I tell people about the trips that are remarkable for me is it's not like you're on the river rowing all day and paddling. You also take hikes, and on the Rogue River, the author Zane Grey actually had a home, and there's this little cabin there, and there's a landing strip. It's really cool. So you do side trips. There was somebody on my last trip who taught a yoga class every day too, which was pretty cool. I was exhausted enough that I didn't need to do yoga, but we swam, and also I also would just in a day and age where everybody is tied to their handheld device or computer. The great thing about your trips is, unless there's a river I don't know about, you don't get any cell phone signal, and so you're pretty much out of touch with the rest of the world, which seems frightening, but is actually quite liberating and wonderful. And I was very impressed by the young guides, who were all engineering students for the most part in college at the time, who ran our whole trip and cooked for us and set everything up and handled all the moving all our bags around and filled with our camping gear and stuff. Logistically, it was amazing.
Yeah, they're great. They're still the same age as they were back in 1982. They stay 24 years old forever. Our guides do. They obviously move on, but that age bracket stays the same. They're young, interesting, hardworking, great people to spend time with. It's interesting you touched on the cell service being offline thing. In 1982, obviously that wasn't even on your horizon. In 2010, your second trip, you were more like, it was a big part of it. It was like, hey, I'm going off the grid for 4 days.
Well, to be honest, so one of the guides that we have a meeting, as you know, before the night before you leave for the trip, and they tell us, don't bother bringing your cell phones. You can leave them in the car. You will never have any reception. And of course, I brought mine anyway and turned it on every day to see if I would get a signal, and there was nothing.
And I think it's interesting because nowadays we have guests who realize that they need that break, and they seek it out, and it's hard to find a place where you can go in today's world and not have internet connection.
It was really wonderful. It was liberating, glorious, and my thumbs got a rest. They thanked me, and I'm looking forward to just less than 2 months from now, I will be on the Green River in the Lador Canyon and leaving, I think, from Vernal, Utah.
Yep.
But we're going to
have
to.
The only reason to bring your cell phone is so you can take pictures.
I'm going to bring a separate camera so I don't drop the phone in the water.
Good.
And any other special trips you recommend or you want to tell us about before we wrap it up?
We've got some trips out here in California on the Tuolumne River, which is the best river in California. We have a couple of bluegrass trips coming up in August that combine all of that magic that we talked about, camping, whitewater rafting, community, and some live bluegrass, mandolin, vocal music that we've been doing for the last few years that are even more magical than other trips.
All right. Well, and everybody can learn more about ARTA by going to arta.org. It's a fabulous website, and we'll tell you everything you need to know. And I look forward to seeing everybody from ARTA when I am out west. So thanks so much for joining us. All righty.
Good talking to you, Rob.
Bye.
Bye.